Yes, welcome back to the show. We did it once again. This is our second recording. So thankful for your time today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Just tell everybody, just kind of like a general summary of where you started in medicine and where you're at now, how that led to Mom and Me MD.
Okay. So, from the age of 10, I actually wanted to be a neonatologist, which is a pediatrician that specializes in taking care of sick infants. So that in the neonatal intensive care unit. So that could be preemies or term infants that have medical issues at birth. So I did a lot of research around that time and set myself on that path. And so fast forward a whole bunch of years. I get into medical school in New Orleans at LSU, complete my training, and then I go to residency for pediatrics here in Atlanta with Morehouse School of Medicine. And part of my training, my intern year, I ended up having a miscarriage of my first pregnancy. So that was very, very challenging, obviously, for a lot of different reasons, but it opened my eyes to the importance of like bedside manner and how we interact with patients who are going through those kinds of difficult challenges. So then that put me at high risk for my pregnancies, for any future pregnancies when you have any of those types of issues. And so my second pregnancy, I started to have some of the same early labor symptoms around like 22 weeks gestation. And so with my pregnancy where I had my miscarriage, my OB had wanted me to bed rest, but I was like, I don't know what that means. Like, staying at home and like sitting down was not really, I guess in my mind at the time, I thought I was resting as much as I could. I wasn't like doing a lot of heavy lifting or anything, but I was still moving around like normal, I think. And so this time I was a little bit obviously like scared, and I was like, well, if I'm gonna go on bed rest, then I should be in the hospital, I think, because I think I just didn't feel like having a repeat of the same situation. So I ended up being admitted to the hospital in Atlanta for like 65 days. I was in the
Wow.
hospital. Yeah. And I ended up having my son at 31 weeks. So we made it 9 weeks doing that. So I'm grateful that I did it that way because, it's no telling if we would have even made it that far. And so he was in the NICU about 5 weeks. And then when he came home, we had to go back on the feeding tube. And so it was just a whole lot because I was also finishing up my senior year of residency and I had gotten into fellowship for neonatology in Baltimore. So I ended up finishing all my training late, like because of the bed rest. I wasn't really thriving in fellowship. Like I was getting the work done and doing all the things, but I was separated from my son. My husband had kept him down in Louisiana with him because he also was doing his own business and things. And so we were trying to figure out where was the best fit. And so just given all of that, I ended up resigning towards the end of my first year because it just wasn't like working out the way that I had thought it would. But it was really that I just felt like I wanted more, like there was more for me to do and more that I could do. And I would always have patients that would always want to follow with me when they leave the hospital. And I'd be like, I only work in the hospital. Like I was against anything doing my own business because I was like, it's easy. I just wake up, I go to the hospital, I do my work, I go home, like I was like, I don't have to worry about all these other things that you have to worry about with business.
Mhm.
But I couldn't stop like that feeling like that maybe I should be listening to that, that voice and other people who are like, hey, you need to work with people outside of the hospital. So then I really didn't want to do full on like regular clinic, even though that's what my husband thinks I should do. He was like, you just need to open your own clinic. You'd like have everybody in your clinic. I was like, but I don't want that. Like I love working with babies and that's my focus, like babies and moms. And especially after my own experience, I really started to really share my journey with the families in the NICU or even moms on labor delivery who would be dealing with a miscarriage or loss. And I realized that that's where my passion lied in sharing my story and helping other people realize they were not alone. And also just giving that attention towards the fact that when you do have a baby, a lot of people are just so focused on the baby and never the mom and family, and how helping people realize that their life has shifted, just like what I came to realize. That's kind of how I got to Mom and Me.
Tell us a little bit about your experience in Reels, because on top of all of this, following your passion, and you share that with so many other physicians as well too, there's this other piece that's building the wealth.
Being in the community with other doctors, I started seeing things like passive income MD and real estate MD and all these other things with doctors doing this. And only became interested because of my husband. It's kind of like why I watch football, because of him.
Mhm.
But he always he came up like he owns auto body shop, so he grew up doing car repairs because that's what his dad owned. But he then shifted into doing like some contract like framing houses. And then when he used to see like what he got paid compared to what the person got paid who sold the house,
Mhm.
he was like, he's always been an entrepreneur. I think that's just just a note. But he was like, why would I can do this just as well enough as they can. And so, he went and did all like the education and the learning, and then he bought up all this land. And I was just like, why are you buying this property and all this property? And we have a lot of property in Louisiana where we're from. And so he bought up about maybe five, well, at first, like 6 lots. And his dad, God rest his soul, he passed away in 2020. But prior to that, my father-in-law had challenged him. He's like, Junior, what are you doing with all this land? Like, what are you going to do with this land? And he was like, you keep saying you're going to build a house, you're going to build a house. And then my husband like took that challenge and like went up with his first house, and like he sold it. And then after that, I think the bug just bit. And so far we've sold 11 homes over the
Nice.
last 3 years. And he's bought, I think we have about 40 acres of land that he owns. And his big thing now is to build a development. Like he wants to build like his own subdivision. He's definitely thinking more long term. He's really good about that. I
Yeah.
am always like kind of in the moment in a way. So we balance each other real good about that. Cause I'm always like, you're always worried about down the road, and I'm trying to pay the kids' tuition next week.
Yeah, yeah. That's awesome. That long-term piece is huge, but it's finding that way to separate your time from money. And
Yeah,
then when you can
that's true.
separate the two, then typically in a development perspective, it's not that the development can't be that long-term return, because then you're building a business. Then you're more of a
Yeah.
business owner than the developer
Yeah.
per se. Because
Yeah.
you got to be, in order for you to separate yourself from that, you don't need to have phone calls every single day to say, hey, what do we do here? What's going on here? That's where you're investing in the business.
A lot of my colleagues have been dealing with like burnout in
Mhm.
medicine. And I certainly have had moments where I've just been like, "Ugh," but I really love the work that I do. And so my answer has been to just scale back on how much I work. Because
Mhm.
sometimes I would just say yes just because I had the time, meaning I was off, or like, oh yes, I am not really doing anything on Monday. Yeah, I'll help out at the hospital or the clinic. But I've learned that I don't have to give my time away like that all the time. And I've prioritized, for me right now, is like spending time with my kids and being involved in the things that they have going on, because they're young, 10 and 5. And so can't get that time back if I'm just always like at the hospital. So this year I've built it where I'm only going to work max 10 days a month. And then the rest of the time, I'm going to focus on building my business and thinking of how I would get it to a place where it would be detached from me, my time, which would mean I would have to hire people to do what I love to do too. And so I was telling someone, I don't think I'll ever 100% be separated unless I just really don't want to practice medicine anymore, because I really do still enjoy practicing medicine. I just don't necessarily think I want to have to do it every day.
If you could go back 10 years and set beside somebody who had a similar kind of path in 10 years, I mean, this is right. Your son was born, I believe, right around that time.
Mm-hmm.
And, lots of stuff going on with, residency, all this kind of stuff. What
Mm-hmm.
would you tell that person who had a similar goal or path trajectory as you?
I would just really tell them to be open to the fact that it may not look the way you initially planned, and that's okay, and be okay with that.